Hello. Welcome once again to the Peterborough Politics Podcast. We are your hosts. My name is Danny Taro, aka my homie Tutaro,
And I am Sebastian Johnston Lindsay. And that's just my
aka
name,
Seabass.
aka Seabass. That's true. Yep. I do have that
If I'm gonna
moniker.
do the AKA, you also have to do the AKA, all right?
Yeah. AKA Seabass Boss Man.
That's right. That's
There we
right.
go. Yeah.
And we are super excited to present this very special episode of our podcast because we are going to be joined by council person Alex Bierk, who is our downtown ward, one of our well known, very progressive leaning councilors. Which means also that we were not fully prepared for this show because we've been trying to work around Alex Bjerk's very busy schedule as well as our own very busy schedules. Needless to say, we are winging it a little bit today.
That we are. That we are. But we're gonna have fun with it.
Yeah, of course we're gonna have fun with it. In some ways, winging it can be a lot more fun, and sometimes you get really great results out of doing that. So I hope this is one of those times. We do have a couple fun things to talk about before Alex shows up. I suppose the funniest one to me here is that Dave Smith has been put on a list, and it's not the list that you might think it is of people who simply want to buy beer at the corner store. But it is a list for not being able to travel to Russia, Russia's
Oh.
foreign ministry list.
Oh, he
So
made it on there.
he did. He made it on. He's joining the likes of Michelle Ferreri, who
Good
was
for him.
put on that list on March 2022, and now
Hmm.
Dave Smith is also on that list, and we don't really know why, and neither does Dave Smith. He said they probably were just making a list, and they slapped his name on it just for kicks. He said though, actually, that this wouldn't affect um, his work in Ontario.
That's good to know. It's good that he's clarifying that. I'm glad that he didn't have any ongoing business in Russia as a provincial politician.
So, what else was on your radar this week? Anything else interesting?
I did see that Jeff Leal has spoken a little bit about the future plans of the official plan and the response to the official plan. He said some words about that, and he recognizes the need for higher buildings in Peterborough's downtown. Um, but I think he's still kind of in prime Jeff Leal fashion, going to defer to city staff and planners to give a more fulsome explanation or response later on. However, I did see that he was talking about it, I believe, on Friday. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
That we need to build higher.
yes, yeah, he
Future of
recognizes.
Peterborough
Yeah,
is in the skies.
yes, Peterborough is on the rise, so to speak.
All right. Okay.
Literally, maybe metaphorically too, but we'll see.
That we're not sure about. But yeah, okay. That's good to hear, I think. I guess I still am worried about the monstrosity that has been approved for the top of the hill, just kind of like not being beautiful. But I mean, if it's serving a good function, then I could look past it
Mhm.
metaphorically.
Yeah, yeah,
Literally, it's going to be hard to look past
it's gonna
because
be it's well, yeah, you won't be able to
it
see
will be
past it.
opaque.
It will be opaque.
Yes.
It will overtake the current largest structure in this area, which is the Quaker Oats factory. It will blot that out of our collective skyline. But
See, I don't like that. I need to be able to see the Quaker Oats factory at all times.
I know that's how I orient myself
Otherwise,
as I'm going through the city.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. There
I
is no
know.
northwest,
No,
southeast.
there is.
It's just myself in proximity to the oatmeal tower.
Yes, yeah. That's how I wake up every morning and I locate myself and I route myself in orientation to the Quaker Oats factory. Yeah, and I walk
After
outside and
after Yeah.
Yeah, I find my way home via um like smell tracker through the
Okay.
for the oatmeal. Yeah,
Right. Of course, after eating a fulsome bowl of oatmeal.
naturally.
Um, yes. Although I do steal cutouts. I don't mess with that Quaker stuff. So I do kind of go off brand there.
Brutal.
Um,
That's a crime against Peterborough.
that's why I'll never be mayor, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that you're on record saying that, there's no way that you're ever going to be elected to public office in the city.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
No, you've doomed
Um,
yourself.
have you heard about the Parkway?
I've heard I've heard that it's dead,
Yes, I
Danny.
know.
The
Some
Parkway
people
is
are
dead.
saying that it's dead. Some people are saying not yet.
Wow.
Which is a bit surprising. So, I mean, it's something we can definitely talk to Alex about. But Joy LaChica here is on record saying that um, she was very happy about that, and it feels like the Parkway is dead, and that is how she reflects and understands it. Mayor Jeff Leal also said that this seems like the end of the chapter for the Parkway or something along those, bringing it to some conclusion. And there are other people like David Hakey and Keith Riel who say not quite yet, that there's still potentially a conversation to be had about having a north-south corridor.
Fascinating. It's
So
I'm just seeing all of this now too, and it would be interesting to see. 'Cause I know that it's been a
yeah,
long standing debate, and
I know.
yeah,
We spent about 2 minutes on it just looking at Google Maps on stream earlier today when we were getting ready for this podcast,
yeah.
and I basically solved it.
Did you? What was your
Yep.
solution?
It's you two nicely placed traffic circles, one at Park Hill and Farbarn, and one somewhere where meets Reed. Or sorry. Yeah, like Reed Street integrates into Shamong Road around Park Hill, somewhere around there as well.
Oh
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
and closing down that little extra bit of Shamong Road that goes between Reed and Park Hill. And then just like boom, done.
I like that idea. I think well we were talking last week. Like I whenever I'm going up that way, or rather when I'm coming down, like I always divert back onto Reed Street, even though it would be faster for me to just continue along Chemong to Park Hill, right? I don't want to make that
Right.
left-hand
Yes.
turn to go back downtown. So this would
Exactly.
solve that problem, really, ideally. It's true.
Nobody can turn left there anyways, as it
No,
is. So
no.
it's like what it's not even doing anything because you're basically forced to turn right and then you have to turn left onto Reed Street to get downtown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like it's not something that you would need to build an entirely new road to solve some of these problems. But
Yeah.
that is just me. I have no vested interest in the corporations that would be building these roads or these highways, and maybe that is why some city councilors are so adamant about making the park a road. But
Yeah.
I actually don't know. I actually don't know what their intentions are.
Yeah. I'm a little bit confused as to their intentions there, to be completely honest.
I was really kind of upset earlier today when I was going through the articles to
Hmm.
see that Dave Hakey basically said that two young people have been killed in cars traveling through neighborhoods, and therefore we need to build a parkway. Um, it seemed like a very kind of like odd justification, and going so much as to say, what is a child's life worth? And with the kind of emphasis of apparently it's worth the cost of the parkway.
Yeah.
Although, and I felt particularly kind of like grossed out by that sentiment, feeling like, hey, we can make our roads safer without building a parkway through the the largest park in Peterborough.
I wonder if perhaps it would be a solution to get more cars off the road to fund public transportation.
I have heard of that. I have heard of
Would that
that.
would that possibly cut down on the amount of cars? I don't know.
Um, I think so.
Yeah.
And certainly Joy La Chica is advocating for stuff like that, which is what I like to hear.
Hmm.
More city transit, more bike lanes, and really that is, I think, what the city needs. Spending all of
Yes.
that money on the parkway will
Yeah.
definitely be better spent trying to kind of like beautify our city and encourage people to take those alternative means of transportation.
Yes.
Um,
Well, yeah. And
we've
I mean,
we've given
yeah.
into the car culture of Peterborough, I think, a little too much, and I think it's time to like scale it back.
Yeah. And I mean, not to mention the fact that if you want people to come downtown, then building a parkway, I presume that would bypass downtown would take people away from that. But I guess maybe that's another part of the urban sprawl design that they're kind of going for in a lot of senses. I don't know.
Yeah, we're
I don't.
sprawling hard. We're sprawling
Yeah.
hard, but hopefully, we're gonna reach those heights, as
Yeah.
Jeff Leal says.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, as like an outsider who like came to Peterborough not too long ago, I'm kind of new to these debates in a lot of ways. And to me, the Parkway is merely a means of getting to the highway. That's the only reason I ever would drive upon it, or to go actually pick up packages down there too. But um,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, that's really the only reason I've ever. But it
I
to me, like
I kind of felt
Cleansilla
that way as well.
is a rather easy way to sort of get in and out of the city. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also think it was a way of, we were talking about it earlier on Shroom today when we were doing research, and somebody said it was intended to like connect the highway maybe to the hospital.
Okay. I
Which
can
I could
kind of
see as
I could see that.
yeah, and potentially maybe connecting the hospital to like the 115 in a more direct way as well.
Yes.
Um so I
Well,
I
that
I think
that would make
that,
sense.
yeah, exactly. So I could see a good reason like that. I just don't think it's necessarily has to happen the way it has so stubbornly been argued for 76 years.
Yeah.
It's quite a long time to
That's a
be fighting
long, long
over.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when we say politics is slow, um,
We mean it.
yeah, and 76 years, that's longer than we're going to be able to do this podcast. I'm pretty sure.
Who knows? I might live to be
Yeah,
106 years old.
that's true. You never know with modern medicine.
Never know. Don't
But
count me out.
that. All right. If you're committed, then I'm committed.
All right, sounds good.
So have you heard also
100%.
about the Canada federal workers strike?
I have, yes, I have an inside scoop to a certain degree on that. Not really a scoop, it's just someone I know who is not currently striking because they've been deemed essential based on what they do. Um,
Okay.
and I'm not going to say what they do, but it's important that they continue doing what they're doing for general safety. Um,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so they've been kind of talking back and forth with me a little bit about sort of what's been going on, and yeah, they were telling me that like long before the strike was even really announced that it was going to be there's going to be a thing. So that was kind of interesting to see. I haven't yet checked out, and I should have while I was walking around downtown. Instead of getting a coffee, I should have gone to down by the Cineplex where there's a government building there, the Ontario government building. There's also a federal office within that building. And apparently there might be picketing out there, so I need to go and see if I can maybe check that out. But yeah, something like 155,000 federal workers currently on strike. Uh,
Yeah.
of course, mainly regarding wages and the ability to work remotely. Strike me as the biggest things. And what the person who I've been talking to has been able to say is that in their experience, they've sacrificed a lot in terms of their pay over the past collective bargaining agreements in order to make up. They've kind of made up for it in past collective agreements in order to gain more in the way of benefits. However,
Okay.
now the pay has gotten to such a point where it's no longer sustainable, and so that really is the major sticking point now, uh, moving forward within these collective bargaining proceedings. So so yeah, it's been kind of interesting. I would like to at some point maybe go and see if I can talk to someone down on if there is a picket line in Peterborough, I'd like to go and maybe talk to one of the people who are there to represent and speak to media. I wouldn't want to go down there and cause any trouble. Obviously, as a current union steward, that would be bad. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting ongoing issue for sure. Hopefully, everyone got their
Yeah,
passports renewed and got their tax returns in on time, because I think those are going to be two things that are very much affected by this.
it's true. I guess I didn't get my taxes in yet, although, we still have time before the deadline. You might just be waiting to get your return though at this point.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Your
Yeah,
tax
and
return
there,
won't be processed.
right.
Yeah.
There was a picket line at least yesterday, outside of Service Canada Center on 219 George Street North.
Okay.
According to Examiner reporting, there was about 125 people holding signs and wearing vests, displaying the words PSAC and Solidarity.
There we go. The
So yeah,
examiner's on it.
yeah, they're on it. It would be great, honestly, to like have some testimonies from the people on the ground. A lot of the Examiner article here just went and talked about the services that are either essential or not essential, the ones that are being not going to be able to be fulfilled during this time. So it would be great. They didn't really dig into like why this is happening, or it seems like they might not have interviewed any of the folks on the ground. So definitely an opportunity for you there to go and
Yeah,
get some scoops.
yeah. I have been kind of tied to my office chair over the past week or so, getting ready for the print edition, and of course now being the only editor at Arthur, I'm very much sort of having to focus on the
Yeah.
on all the tasks that come along with the running the newspaper. But that is something that is on my radar in terms of wanting to get out there and talk to some people. Yeah, because
Right. How privileged
it's
we
important.
are, really, to be able to
Yeah.
work from home.
Yes. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, it's
It's true. I mean, I am sitting and working in my home right now. So
I know, and you have to
yeah.
think like how much time you really save. You're not commuting. That can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours a day. Some
Yeah.
people even more. You don't have to go
Mhm.
pay for lunch or whatever and pay for coffee. It's like you can just like make all that stuff at home. So it's no surprise that people prefer the lifestyle of working at home, especially maybe if you have kids or family members who need taken care of. It just makes life a lot easier if you can work from home. Obviously, a lot of the federal employees, they were able to successfully work from home throughout the pandemic, and it's kind of just like shocking to me that the negotiators on the side of the federal government are not willing to kind of play ball with that. Like it's why not just help people live a better lifestyle that they want? It's definitely not worth shutting the whole country down because we know people are still able to do their work. So
Mhm.
why not just let them do their work the way they would prefer to do it?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, like the person I know who is currently not on strike, but has been deemed essential, is currently carrying out their tasks from home. So, I mean, obviously they've been directed to do that by their union, right? Like they're not allowed to
Okay.
go and cross the picket line physically, right? But they're technically also within the collective agreement, not breaking a picket line. I think is important to say as well. Um, but um, but yeah, so clearly, and all through the pandemic, they were working from home, and that's the case with a lot of workers too, right? Like it's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and especially
It's
if people are sorry, yeah.
no, no, go on.
I was just going to say, and especially people who work in like larger city centers where it's not exactly affordable to live within. Like, you're right to point out like the cost of commuting, the cost in terms of time away from family, time away from children, right? Like that adds up a lot. And if the job can be carried out as it seems to have been able to be being carried out since 2020, I imagine, it strikes me that that should be an option. It's probably a
Yeah.
cheaper option too for the vast majority of for the government itself, for
Yeah.
Canada. It's probably
I
cheaper.
mean, theoretically you need less office space. You know, less a lot of things, I'm sure. Less like supplies, and people are also just happier.
Yeah,
Isn't that enough that your employees
yeah,
would be happy?
yeah,
And also in many cases, I think they are more productive as well. So it's like, I really don't understand this issue,
no,
because working from home, I think is great. And yeah, we of course want like the city to function in a nice way where, like, yeah, people should go downtown to do things, but hey, maybe we should offer more to life than just like work. You know, like if you want people to go downtown and spend money on the bus and support that local business, then maybe do something to get them down there besides going to work. You know,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
just my opinion.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Kind of something we've touched on in Peterborough, just like when we're talking about arts and how to get people downtown and how important that is. It's like, yeah, we need to facilitate that economic activity.
yeah. But instead, they're shutting down federal services in order to drive home the point that they need to be in the office at least 1 or 2 days a week. Just kind of strange.
Yeah,
Kind of strange.
yeah, and no, it's strange to me too. Just like 2 days a week. It's like, why does that matter? Yeah, we need you to be in the office 2 days a week to do the exact same job that you were doing the other 3 days of the week. And then
Yeah,
like and it's really important for me, at least, and I'm sure many people, is like to be comfortable in my workspace, to have a routine. And it's
yep,
like, why, if it's like every other day you have to change the routine, um aren't you going to be less productive? Like, you have to think, those days you're at the office, you're waking up earlier, your day is completely different than it is the
yep,
day before.
yep,
And it's like, why? It's it's really shocking to me. I
yeah.
guess one thing that I have read about this issue is that some of the large banks who own the office buildings, are worried that, you know, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage on these giant investments that they've made in like downtown Toronto. I don't know if that's directly related to the federal workers striking, but that seems to be along the same lines as to why people need to go into the office.
Right. Well, that
Yeah.
had occurred to me too. It's like exactly what would happen with the buildings where no one's actually working from anymore is yeah, there's a vested interest in terms of the people who own that building and who are collecting money on like you say the mortgages, or
Right.
renting out space to the federal government, right? Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good
I
point.
mean, I do wonder. I haven't read about it yet, but I do wonder if maybe even some of those buildings are federally owned, um, or what the deal is there. Like, really, it's confusing because it doesn't make any sense from an outsider perspective, right? It's
Yeah,
like people are more productive and happier if they can work from home, but you're forcing them anyways to come back into the
yeah,
office. And also, you know, this is all without even saying that the pandemic is still going on. You
hmm,
can still get COVID and long COVID and risk getting a debilitating novel virus. And why should you have to do that for a job that you can do at home?
exactly. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's a huge issue, and I think it calls attention to the fact that Canada is just a big bank and oil company kind of wrapped up with a nice Canadian flag
In a trench coat, as they
in a
say.
trench
Yeah.
coat. Yeah, in the trench coat. I think Alex
We've
might be
been.
trying to get in.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Okay,
so.
great.
I think so.
Wow. Are we live?
Hello.
Are
We're
we
live.
live?
We are
We
live.
are
We're
live.
live.
Really?
Yeah.
Really, really.
So where were you today? You were at Fleming. What was going on there?
Seabass, how are you doing? Let's talk about you.
I'm good. I'm
Um,
good. There's nothing interesting about me.
no, I don't know.
This
I
is
don't
your
know if there's
time.
anything interesting about me, but
Yeah.
I
What were
was
you up to this morning?
I was at this panel. Fleming's actually really cool, and I really would love the idea of bringing like the modern atmospheres, like the modern building and the atmosphere of like Trent and Fleming. Like it's really it seems like it would be so beneficial to have those institutions have more of a footprint downtown. Like it just seems so amazing to be there uh today, and it was just like an event. I'm not sure, it was called Ignite Peterborough, and it was like about reimagining, or I don't know, actually scratch that. Don't quote me on what it was about, but it was just a bunch of panel discussions, and I was on a panel with Joy LaChica and Dave Meslin. Have you guys heard of Dave Meslin?
No, I don't think
No,
so.
I haven't. Let us know about Dave Meslin.
Danny, Google him quick.
Okay.
I don't know if I
I
remember. I don't know if I remember enough to get it right, but he was really funny. And so our job was we had like a tight 5 minutes to discuss 3 ideas about creating a more participatory city.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Yeah.
and so it was funny. The
Okay.
context of it was
Wow.
funny because it was like it was a very like business class environment, you know, even up to the itinerary said like dress sort of business casual, business formal. And so I wore my like opposite of that, you
There you
know,
go.
it's just
nice. Representing the common
a
folk.
little bit,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but
I see
All
here
right.
that
Well, quick
Dave Meslin
Google
was
search.
yeah, he wrote
Yeah.
a really interesting sounding book called Tear Down: Rebuilding Democracy from the Ground Up.
yeah.
That sounds like a good read.
So he had some
Democracy is a train wreck. Agreed.
well, he had some really good ideas about making city council a more inviting environment, you know, and my experience is that having before being on council, speaking there was a really intimidating process. You know, you would have to sit through however many like hours or half an hour segments of different stuff, not really knowing how long it was going to be, and then you get shuffled in and you have like a tight time frame to get everything off your chest in this really formal setting. So Dave was talking about different ways on how to make that more of a participant thing, right? This municipal version of government that actually has so much effect on our lives. And he said something really funny about the security there. He said in his research, no one has ever attacked a councillor or murdered a councillor, a city councillor, except council on council violence, which I thought was hilarious. So like,
Wow.
yeah, he pointed that out, but it was
Hopefully, we're
interesting.
not going to see any of that in Peterborough Council.
Oh my gosh, knock on wood.
Yeah, I hope that there's no precedent setting there from anyone in the community or anyone on council. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
bad. That would be bad.
So, yeah, how have things been going so far? Did want to kind of just talk to you about like, obviously you won your bid to be town ward councillor, and like I just want to talk about like what your platform was and maybe introduce yourself to the audience a bit more as well. What your platform was and why you think you won and how your has kind of gone so far.
Thanks. Well, yeah, you cut out on the last little bit, but I think you said how you're doing so far. Um, my platform seems to be like from a different lifetime, right? Like that the world that I was in campaigning is like so different from this world. It seems like really optimistic, all of the things that I wanted to accomplish. I think that at the end of the day is that I tried to represent things from an experience, like experiencing living here and experiencing being someone that has a history of addiction and loss and connection to others who are really marginalized, and seeing that the struggles that they have to live through in the city, and also seeing the changes that have happened here, and really wanting to confront the issues that we have in Peterborough with like a new approach, a more community centered approach that involves people that are living through the very issues that we're making changes about, or the policy that we're deciding on. There's such an attitude about homelessness or addiction that it has to be like a punitive response to those things, and like I'm someone who has lived through that response and seen it firsthand not working. I have seen the systems that we have in place that are criticized, like harm reduction is being really criticized right now. I have lived through that criticism, and I know that those things that are just starting to come in our community that are radically different approaches to like addiction, like they're just starting to come to happen, and they're drastically under resourced. And so my campaign platform was to like really address the issues that we're facing in Peterborough in a meaningful and by incorporating the views of people that are living through those experiences to help come up with policy and systems that are really going to have an impact, right? And then you asked how I was doing, how I'm doing, or
Yeah, of course. Like, how do you feel now that you've had? Is it 4 months about in the hot seat? Like, how do you feel like it's been so far in relationship to like what you kind of set out to do? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I'll say that I think the thing that's been really difficult for me has been to balance it. I'm the chair of arts, culture, and heritage. I'm the vice chair of housing and the vice chair of homelessness. And under those umbrellas are a lot of meetings. Like, I can bring up my schedule on my work phone, and it's like all red. Like some days have like today have like 4 things, and those aren't just like things I can come into blindly to. Like these are things that I have to read beforehand, um, be an active participant in the discussion and the decision making at these tables, and then be a part of the action from those meetings afterwards, right? And so when you take that with me having an art career that is a very labor intensive way of painting, and to have 3 small children, it's a lot to sort of balance. And there's some of us on council that I think have more to balance than others, right? So it's been much like this interview, you imagine it to happen in a really thoughtful, calm way, and it's totally not the case. We get like on Wednesday we get like a stack of reading to do on a multitude of different things, and we have a short window of time to really build how we feel about what we're reading, and to connect with the community about things that I don't understand about the things, or to connect with city staff about, and then boom, all in one night, get it out on the table and give your best 5-minute segment on how you feel about that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess there was the biggest question I'm being asked is like, hey, do you love it? And I don't love it, but I don't not love it. Like, I feel really driven to do the work that I'm doing, and I think that I say we because I think there's a whole community behind me. I feel that support, and I think that we have had some really good things to be celebrated, for motions that have passed or motions that have been discussed about in a really honest way, right? Even if they didn't end up passing, I think that it feels important to have a seat at the table to be able to talk about things in the open, and press our other leaders for this decision point on how they really feel about things that impact us.
Yeah.
That makes
And I
sense?
think, yeah, and it's a lot of things that you said there. Like being at council every Monday as I am, and bearing witness to the ways in which these conversations are coming forward. I think you have really pushed a lot of counselors to kind of reveal exactly where they stand on a lot of these issues, and it is because of the frankness with which you talk about a lot of these topics, right? From the lived experience and from your community involvement, right? And something you said in there was like really interesting to me as well, in terms of like having people who, you know, don't necessarily fit the specific mold that one might imagine a city councilor to kind of be in, right? Like you as an artist with a young family, you've spoken a lot about that as well. And I was just wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit more about like how that experience, or if there's been anything since you've started on council, like have you had conversations with community members who've like, obviously you were elected by people who kind of understood that this is, who understood you and your platform and were behind that. However, obviously there's been some detractors as well. But have you heard from anyone in terms of like, have you like managed to like shake their understanding of some of these issues, or has anyone like had that conversation with you at all, or is it still like you've had some major wins in terms of like specifically around like getting more city staff workers at shelters, right? And that getting that motion through in the individual artist grant. But then there's been a lot of other things in which, that hasn't gone through. But I'm just curious if there's anything where you've had a discussion about like changing the hearts and minds, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's an interesting question, Seaback, and I think the thing is it's really easy to be in our lives in the community and in around our community and feel a certain way about things, but then to enter into a world that's like so corporate, like literally to where we get training the first day and it's like, this is the corporation of the city of Peterborough, right? And this is the corporate structure, and this is where you fit into the corporate structure. It's not always as straightforward as saying like, oh, you passed that, you didn't pass that, this happened, that didn't happen, right? I think that, you know, if I feel like an executive level person in that corporation, except I don't have a boss, right? So I can come into the meetings in my raggedy denim shirt and like speak off the cuff, in the same way that the more conservative minded counselors can, right? And it's about, it's a balancing act. And I think that some of the biggest victories that I've had on council have been ones that no one's seen publicly. You know, I feel really connected, and really grateful for the way that Councillor Riel has taken me under his wing and how we've built a strategy for our homelessness, like an urgent, like we're addressing the urgency of the situation in a report that's going to come to council in May. And so that feels really positive, you know. I think that some of the city staff that I work closely alongside, like the executive level city staff, it's been nice to hear the things that I've been like banging the table about for so long, start to come into like the working mindset of the city staffers that I work with, right? And that feels positive. Like I feel validated by that, you know. So those are some things that feel like little incremental steps in the right direction for me.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, just getting back to like how busy you are too, I just want to say thank you so much for like adding us to your list of things in your calendar today and joining us. And yeah, one thing I've talked to other people about, you know, I talked to Kemi when they were on city council and Diane Tyrion, like at the end of the day, it is supposed to be a part-time job for you.
Yeah.
Is it feeling like that? Is it feeling like much more than that?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that I've done differently than other people has been that a lot of people would recommend and have told me and have said that this is what other new counselors have done, is just like take your first year to figure it out, right? And like I'm like, no. Like we have issues in the city that are at these crisis level breaking points, and I do not have the luxury of taking a year to figure this out, while things may even get further stepped back in the opposite direction. You know, the opposite direction that I want to try to take things. So like I've really been trying to go the extra mile to like figure things out, the mechanisms of how to create emotion and the work that goes into that, and you know, a lot of and also like rein in my own ambition, you know, like the naloxone motion that is coming this week, it came from just requesting a report, you know. So like acknowledging that it might be too radical to like just push a policy down everyone's throat in emotion, and just understanding that might not pass, to take things like incrementally by requesting a report and seeing where that goes.
Right. Is that just because like, you know, a lot of the counselors or city staff might not even be educated about the nature of what you're trying to motion?
No, I think it's just like my own way of trying to learn how the city works, right? Like I'm used to going to meetings in like recovery or in the arts where it's just like you want to do something, you propose it, you get the votes, and you do it, right? And so for me to just say like, let's have an naloxone policy for the city, well, I'm going to get like 100 questions back about that policy that I don't have the answer for, right?
Okay.
So yeah, but you know, I think your question was about it being a part-time job, and like this is why I've connected with Keith Riel so much. He sits close to me, and like even though we may feel differently about some issues, like we both enter the job with the same mindset where like we're really interested in everything that comes across our table, and we don't just rip open our packages like when we get to the meeting and hit it on the spot. Like we dig into it, right? Whether it's about parking or whatever, doctor recruitment. We both are kind of like pit bulls in this way where we want to just figure it out and like get to the bottom of what we're trying to understand, right, collectively. And so that is, I guess, my own way of just like making it more like putting in or feeling like the labor behind it, you know? Yeah, it's
Okay.
interesting. I had a lawyer at this event at Fleming come up to me after our panel, and he was like, "You guys took all my ideas for the participatory city." And he's like, "But my last idea that I have, which I'm going to get scrutinized for, is that we need to pay all of you like a good, decent living wage and a full-time wage, and we need to pay the mayor really well, because these are important positions, right? And so when you have city councilors that you are working overtime and you pay not a living wage to, like I can't afford to survive on what I get from city council to provide for my family. And so what happens is you get a lot of people on council that are retired, right? Or and I don't know if that's the way to have like a really future thinking city, that you have a lot of active, energized leaders, right? Like, I mean, would you want to be like a young person and you're in the mid stage of your career? Would you want to put that aside to make like, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to get at, Danny? Help me out.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're
yeah.
trying to get at. You know, same
Yeah.
kind of sentiment that's been expressed by others as well,
Mhm.
that it's just unsustainable. Like I would like, you know, I'm sure Seabass and myself, we perceive ourselves as quite involved and interested people. But there's really no incentive for us to do it. Like I literally might not even be able to do it because it would take up so much of my time for so little money. You know, my wife would probably be like, "What are you doing?" Like, we need to pay our bills, you know? So, you know, I can only imagine for you as well, with like 3 kids, like it must be like a juggling act, especially when you want to do what you're passionate about as well. So yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I think that's why so many of us kind of like commend you as well. And we think you're kind of like the one who is like really doing some self-sacrifice maybe on those fronts, so that people have a voice in the room.
Yeah. Thank you. And like, I have a lot of privilege. Like, I don't want to be like a martyr for this, but I think, like, I really think it's funny the way Keith and I are, like, I can't read about something that we're going to talk about that affects our community and like just let it go. Like, I don't have that ability, right? I read about it and like I'm actually interested in trying to figure out a solution that's going to be good for us, right? And that's the part that's like all encompassing, right? And it's like it becomes, and there's like a part of that that's not, it's not all bad. There's a part of that that I really love and that I'm really driven by, you know? And I think this is this balance where it's like, do you love it? And I'm like, I don't love it, but I am driven to continue to do it, because I feel that it's important, right?
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
also
And
I cannot identify with the people on council that don't think that way. I don't even know how they do it. They must be a different breed.
name names. No, I'm just kidding.
Lips are sealed. No, I think we can do our own homework on that. But like so much of this is like something I constantly say when when I come on the podcast is like politics is slow, right? And I've done so much learning because my first council meeting, and I said this to Matt Crowley as well. My first coverage of a council meeting was your first meeting. So like we've been going to council for like the same amount of time there. And like to see like the ups and downs and like the drama, but also the way in which you discuss and like talk to city staff, which is so much like a lot of people don't see that sort of behind the scenes stuff, right? Because they just don't have time. And I'm very privileged again. That's my job, right? Like I get to go into these spaces and talk to all of you and get sort of the understanding of like what's sort of unfolding. But I imagine that was a little bit of a shock as well, because I can talk about not taking a year to learn the ropes of everything. Like you showed up at the first committee meeting with like a motion to fund tiny homes, right? Like that was, you hit
And the
the
winter
ground
drop and the winter strategy
in
too.
the winter strategy. Yeah, yeah. So like you did not waste any time, and I think that that's something that you know, as much as I always say, you know, politics happens slowly, you've sort of worked against that to a certain degree as well by forcing the issue, which is so important because so often we don't see that, right? And so And so I think that that's really, again, to get back to your original point, like you're forcing these conversations and you're forcing other counselors to kind of either reevaluate, but then also, show where they lie so that people actually have like a nuanced understanding. And then, I mean, that's my job to kind of report on those conversations, right? But you're forcing people to have these really difficult conversations, and every like incremental wins is significant and needs to be celebrated, right? Like it's not happening as fast as a lot of us, and I imagine you want it to see happen, but things are happening, right?
And like
Kind of.
my in elementary school, I got suspended because I started a fight between my best friend and someone else. And the principal called us in, and he got really mad at me, and he yelled, like frothing mad at the situation, and then he pointed at me and he said, "You're the only one that's going to get suspended because you started this. You're going to be an instigator. You're going to be an instigator your whole life." And I'm like,
Ah,
I'm trying to just reform that. And like, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the hardest thing has been that on the campaign trail, it was like this like wave of support and positivity and optimism. And once I got on to council, it's like a vacuum, right? It's like Joy and I are the lone progressives. The voices of from the community, like the narrative that is pitched to us that we're hearing is mostly like the more conservative side are the ones who are consistently writing in. A lot of the other counselors don't communicate in the ways of social media that we all do. So the way that they're hearing the feedback from the community is by these email threads that we get. And it's difficult to hear those opinions be taken to heart, even in just very subtle ways, in the issues that we talk about, and even with city staff, right? To have them be part of these email threads and hear this stuff. So it's really interesting from today to think about how we as a community can become more involved, and I think like a lot of that responsibility lies on the city, to think about ways in which how to engage people. Even just being like a guy, like my studio is downtown, and there's so many business owners just in this block, that catch me when I'm getting a coffee and stuff, and they have so many strong opinions about the issues and the policy that affects them, but they're just like, they're not at all engaged in it, right? So that's it's interesting for me today specifically to think about that. And Danny, like you're like really looking at this, and the way that you guys are engaged in it, I think is really helpful, and I appreciate the work that you do, because I think we need to connect more regular folks to local politics.
Yeah, that is definitely part of the goal, and have had some nice feedback from people just saying like, "Hey, it's great because it's so hard to follow these things." So the fact that you can just tune in for like a 1 hour podcast, I mean, we do usually go over time,
we
but
do. Yeah.
but just try to get that quick hit of like, "Hey, this is what's going on in the community," and in an accessible way. That is definitely part of the goal. So thank you so much. Do appreciate that
Yeah.
a lot. And yeah, I think it is really important for you and Joy, as you say, to have that kind of alliance. I don't know if you could officially call it that, but it seems like you certainly vote the same way on a lot of the in favor of the more progressive issues. With Councillor Crowley also kind of joining in some of the time as well, and it's that voting block that is, even if it fails, it is like representing the progressive voice in Peterborough.
Yeah.
Have you heard about like even the most recent incident of a couple being removed from Nichols Oval Park? And it seems like this idea of removing encampments and really pushing marginalized people even further away is something that is like still really affecting the Peterborough narrative here. And I don't know, how do you know, or would you like to comment at all about this most recent incident in Nichols Oval?
I mean, I have to be careful with with what I say. I mean, I think that what I'm really excited about has been to have a voice at this table about this issue and to build something that is you're going to see in the first week of May that is radically different than how the issue has been approached before this. So I think that's really cool. I don't know what the will of council will be, but I know that homelessness serving agencies that we need to partner with are very, very, very excited and on board and positive about this idea. And so I think that that's exciting because at the end of the day, I don't know if it's exciting. It is exciting because at the end of the day, we need to address the situation in a meaningful way. And, it would be a full-time job just responding to the emails. And a lot of the really hateful messages are from people that are fed up with people setting up. There's a really harmful narrative attached to that, to what's happening. And
okay, sorry, what do you mean there are people who are setting up?
That's just like people that are camping, people that are homeless, that are living not in the shelter, that are living outside. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, it must be hard to deal with all that kind of hatred. How do you even address that as a single city councilor?
Well, I mean, it really drives me to do the work and take the meetings and try to work with staff on an approach that's going to be different. It's been tough. I've had to stop doing a lot of the outreach that I do, but I was doing before the election, which made me more connected way to people that were experiencing living in the encampment. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think we have to take our own, we have to look at the wellness, this community safety, wellness, and well-being plan or whatever it is. I've been inundated with acronyms with this job, but there's a lot of policy that the city has that really urges it to engage with stakeholders in the community and people with living through what we're talking about, right? People that are camping, put them at the center of whatever that solution is going to be. I got someone at the door. Do you want to see who it is?
Sure.
Who is it? Who could it be?
Who could it be? We got a guess here. I'm gonna say Joy LaChica. I don't know.
Oh.
that is my random guess here.
Come.
Who is it?
My boy Chad. Chad, come here.
Oh, okay. Yo, what's up, Chad?
Danny Taro. You're gonna be on. Oh, hey. Can I ask you a favor?
What?
We're talking about the encampment.
What encampment down there?
Wolf Street.
Yeah, what about it?
Can you look into the camera, Chad?
Yeah, I really don't like
What?
looking into the camera, but I will.
Okay, well, you don't have to look at it. You can look
Alright.
at me.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
That's Danny, and that's
Hey, good.
This is my
Hello.
friend Chad. He's known me my whole life, right, Chad?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's
Good to
up,
meet
Chad?
you.
Just to let you know, we're live on the internet right now.
You don't have to be. We're talking about the encampment.
Maybe I'll sit on the other side.
Yeah. Chad's gonna go sit on the other side.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I guess another thing that is happening in the city right now too is the new private security as enforcement. And that just seems like a very kind of dangerous road to go down, that there are now people who are not as accountable as even our own police who are or our city staff who are now enforcing encampments. I don't know. I don't know if you can comment on any of this, but I would appreciate any insight.
No, I mean, one of the things that I looked at with the motion for the winter strategy was I really wanted to unpack how the ineffective ways in which we're spending our money on the problem that could be reimagined to build systems in place that actually meet the needs of people that are unhoused. And one of those costs is the $3,330 per week, up to that the city was spending on private security. And I think that it was just to enforce bylaws because the bylaw enforcement people felt unsafe to do so. Do you know about that, Chad?
Yes, I did, but
You get along with security, eh?
yeah, but they already have security there. So why be hiring two different security companies to look after one road?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting.
That's a waste of money to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's,
Yep.
I really try to frame these discussions with how we're currently spending our money and how we need to reimagine that, right? Like another thing that I feel, Chad, are we okay to talk about anything right now?
Yep.
So Chad went to, I know this isn't the city, but like Chad went to Detox a few times and they gave him $350 to take a cab there. You know, we have, when the shelters are full in the winter, you have to wait until midnight out in the cold, and then the city was putting people in cabs to the Blue Jay Motel for the night, but you'd have to be out by like 8 in the morning. We're taking people in some cases from homelessness and we're putting them in an apartment with 4 white walls and no supports attached to that. And we're checking off a box saying, look, we housed this person, right? And over the year we housed 358 people or something, right? But that number is like not a static number, right? So you could have someone that was housed in that system like 7 or 20 times, right? From homelessness to an apartment back to homelessness, right?
The example, there's 2 people that left the Brock last month
Yeah,
and they're back already.
they're back already.
They had places to rent.
Yeah.
And they filled.
Did you hear that?
Now let's take.
Sorry, what was that?
Chad was just saying, Chad's at the Brock mission right now, and he said an example of that. What I'm saying is that he had people 2 months ago that left the Brock. They got housing apartment, right?
Yep.
And now they're back in the Brock 2 months later.
Because they can't take care of themselves, they can't pay bills, they
Yeah.
can't do ordinary stuff to keep a place going.
Mhm.
So people like that, maybe we need a, you know, older people, retirement home or.
But I think it comes back to the idea, which is that if we just meet people where they're at and we listen to the reasons why people are choosing to set up, as opposed to accept the shelter options that are available, I think then we can take those reasons and start to build a system from those reasons that's going to meet people's needs, right? Like we know that we need to have a more barrier-free shelter system. We know that to make that work, we need to have a high client to staff ratio, because it's not all the time safe, right? And people that are in the shelter need to feel safe as well as the workers. And the way that I've seen that work is to hire people with lived and living experience and to have a lot of staff per client ratio. We have people talk about what a disaster Wolf Street is, the overflow. You got 2 staff for 32 beds and 5 rooms. What's it like in the overflow?
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Can you hear Chad talk?
It's crazy at the Brock, it's crazy at the overflow, it's crazy on the streets. It's crazy at Trinity Church.
Yeah.
And the problem is, they're spending the money and the funding the wrong way.
Did you hear that?
That's the whole problem.
Yeah.
Like I said, we got 2 security companies working inside and one outside. Why not just have one good security company, have a counselor on site, and a couple of staff members?
Yeah. And so,
Maybe someone from Parn or something, you know?
yeah.
Just don't go hire these security guards saying there's special forces or something,
Yeah.
you know? How much might that cost?
It's a lot. And like,
And are these qualified people that have been homeless, or are these qualified people that have been on drugs or on the streets?
and so the hard part is that you have the community and they look at the overflow shelter as an example and they say, we're done with supporting more shelter. Look at the overflow. We're doing it and it's a nightmare, right? And the thing is it's like the overflow is like a patchwork idea written on the back of a napkin, lightning quick, understaffed, under-resourced, right? And we're using that as the comparator to say, like, we're not going to do that anymore. Like we need to really change on how we're resourcing these things in place for our community that needs them, right? And it's a mistruth to say that, we're gonna, like, I've heard so many things, when I was campaigning, I heard things like, oh, if we continue to fund social services, it's going to bankrupt the city. But we have to find ways of addressing our issues if we're ever going to move out of find pathways out, right?
Yeah.
Come talk, Chad. Come talk.
And especially moving away from like the punitive means of addressing this, right? And I mean, you've spoken rather, again, very frankly and in council, questioning the means by which this is being enforced, right? Like through punitive measures. And I think what Chad was saying there too, like there needs to be people there who have the lived experience, who know, who aren't there to punish people, to like inscribe these systems, right, of punishment for people who need help, you know,
That's
or who
probably
are just trying to survive.
been homeless, I've been on the streets, I've been to all the missions, overflow, and we feel like we're being punished.
Yeah.
Stereotyped, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
But we feel like, you know.
Yeah.
We're mostly grown people.
You're growing up. You're older than me.
Stop giving us these rules and,
Yeah.
you know, we're trying to survive is what we're trying to do. But you put these rules on us and then slap us with a suspension for missing curfew at 12 o'clock.
And I had a talk.
Just makes things worse.
I had a
People mad. It makes people drink.
Yeah.
Makes people
Yep.
do drugs.
I had a really good talk with Sandra Clancy, who was the CAO at the time, about this. And she said, she's really nice. I always felt like she gave me space to hear me out. And I really appreciate, as someone who's like a different than your typical counselor, I really appreciated that from Sandra. And I always felt really heard. And I felt like she tried to understand me. And that meant a lot to me. And she said something to me in a meeting once. And she said, like, Alex, you always say that Wolf Street's a nightmare. Like, what do you mean? And I said, Sandra, I told her what I told you just a moment ago, which is like, it's 32 beds within 5 rooms, and there's only 2 staff to monitor that situation. And people that are using that shelter feel unsafe. They would feel more safe if they had a tent outside that was more autonomous. And she really understood that when I said that to her. Or people understand like what Chad's talking about, right? He's almost 50. He's a grown man. And if he goes to the Brock, he can't lay down during the day, right? Like he can't, he takes
9 a.m. and 9 p.m.
So he takes medication for his arthritis that he has to take at the Brock in the morning, and it makes him drowsy. And as a grown person in this model of shelter, like he can't even lie down.
So it makes me
You know?
worse. I
Yeah.
just go walk the streets and I get involved in booze, which I'm an alcoholic. So
Yeah.
being there by 12 o'clock at night, and I know.
And so we've talked
This
about,
winter was the hardest on me, walking the streets in the cold, and I'm new at this. And there's people out there that have been doing it for years, and they still haven't got help.
Yeah.
We can build a sports complex on Lansdowne Street.
Yeah.
People don't have homes and money and a situation stable. How are they gonna play sports?
I know.
It doesn't add up to me.
And yeah. And so I'm trying to talk a little bit about what I think a better approach would be, right? And the opposite idea is also very loud right now, which is just like, let's get rid of that. Like, I don't know. I think the decision to keep the overflow going passed by 1 vote. So it was like an almost split decision. And the patience for that, the patience to keep going is very, very low. Right. So like, what does that look like now if you take that under-resourced shelter and then you take that away? And it's like, it's always the argument I try to make, like, where are people going to go? Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you where they're gonna go.
Yeah.
They're gonna camp right on the main streets.
Yeah.
The corners of Hero Square,
Yeah.
corners, City Hall, everything.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna come to. If you keep pushing us away, pushing us away.
Mhm.
Cause it makes it feel like we're nobodies.
Mhm.
There are somebodies.
You guys hear all that?
And that's. Like,
Can you get on the camera?
people sitting on the.
Chad, can you get on the
streets.
camera?
No.
You're better looking than I am. Okay.
Even just getting closer to the mic would probably be helpful.
Where's the mic?
You just talk. I'm getting upset.
Okay.
Sorry, guys, I just, I'm glad.
No, that's
No
great.
worries, no
I really
worries.
appreciate your perspective on this, you know, because we can sit here and talk about it, but we don't know.
Vancouver,
What it's like.
of people sleeping on their main corners and main
Yeah.
drags right now. Does Peterborough want that?
No.
Because when you push people away, and they have no place to go, and they get pushed out of parks or
Yep.
door. What do you think we're gonna do? They're
And
gonna
it-
start sleeping in alleyways.
Yeah.
They're gonna make this town feel really out.
And it's like the argument, if you guys can indulge me for a sec, right? Like we had at council, people talking about this new development that was happening with the lack of parking. Where you going, Chad?
Mhm.
And so one of the things I heard back about that from a guy that lived in the neighborhood was like, we're all for densification, but like I can't buy socks and underwear downtown. You know, I have to go to
Right.
and
Yeah.
and then also like when you look at homelessness, a lot of the ideas that are being thrown around are like find some land on the county, or like where's
Yep.
some industrial land at the edge of town. You know, there's been some sites that have been thrown around that have been like really far out of town, and I think personally that those are bad ideas, and people that I know that are unhoused would feel very isolated out there. I think that it would meet the needs of some people to build a community away from the downtown core, but when you look at it through the same ideology as the people that need services close to them, you know, like a lot of the homelessness serving organizations are based downtown, like where people get fed and where people get access to systems of support. So I think that to have anything on the edge of town is like bound to fail, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
It's almost too apt a metaphor of trying to push people to the edges of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, let's get honest about why people want to do that, right? Do they think it's the best idea, or do they actually think that they want to just push the problem out of sight, right?
Right. Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, I think we can, draw our own conclusions on that for sure. You know, it's,
Yeah.
like Danny said,
Um,
it's too apt a metaphor.
Yeah. Have you ever had the chance to like ask any of those other counselors, even like when they're voting against some of those things, like keeping the overflow shelter going, and you said just like, well, where are they gonna go? And like, do you ever have the chance to kind of just ask someone that? And if so, like, what did they say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, that's been one of the most difficult challenges of being on council, is that I was optimistic coming into this that those conversations could happen and people's minds could shift, including my own too, right? With things, as I heard things from different perspectives and viewpoints, and it seems like there's no capacity for that, right? It seems like people are coming into the issues with their mind already made up, and I saw that my first council push when you heard from the people that serve our homeless community. You know, we heard stories of someone, it was in the winter at that time, we heard stories of someone peeling someone's sock off of their foot because they had trench foot, and you could see the bones in their foot exposed because they were living outside. And you heard from people who had to clean feces and feces up from someone because they had tried to find a washroom downtown at night, and Tim Hortons wouldn't let them in. The Peterborough public bathrooms were closed, and so they ended up on the foyer of this church, right? Just having soiled themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, how can you, and even with the arts, right? With the theater on King, you know, which was like the most strong group of passionate delegates that came and pled their case in this framework that allowed them to do so, to shift people's minds, and that had no effect. So my hope for that, my hope for those like shifts to happen on the floor is kind of lost a little bit. Danny, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that was going to be the game. I thought that was going to be what this is about, right?
Right.
It's like, let's hear each other out on the floor and let's like make a decision based on that. But it seems like way less of that and more of like, this is how we feel going into this, and that's that, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Which I wonder is like going back to like one of the first questions I asked, like if there are people who, you know, are beginning to kind of come around and see, because of the work that you're doing, to kind of have their minds changed as a result of some of the discussions and the ways in which you're forcing counselors to vote and express themselves, right? Like if that might be the ways, like if people who are, you know, living in autonomy ward, for instance, I'm just picking very randomly, if counselors in a certain ward were to begin hearing from the constituents like, hey, you should be paying attention because I like what this guy Alex or this person, these people, these other counselors, I like what they're saying, and why are you working against this? This makes sense. Like if maybe that's like the sort of ground level grassroots sort of ways in which that things are going to end up having to change, right? Because these conversations aren't happening behind closed doors necessarily. I mean, there's lots of ways in which council could be more accessible to the public, and I think it should be. It's part of the reason why we do this podcast, right? But I'm wondering if after like a year or two, if eventually councilors are going to start hearing from their constituents and realize like, oh shit, maybe I should not come into these conversations with my mind made up already, or maybe I should listen to people who are expressing this.
Yeah. And I mean, that's my question as well, is like, as you say, your advocacy, which I mean, I assume also like as an artist and an influencer or whatever, right? Like we hope that we're reaching people, that we're changing hearts and minds, even if it's just a small group minority of people. Like it's like, what is the missing element maybe? And maybe it is what Seabass is saying here is like, maybe it doesn't need to come from you or people who are staunchly opposite side of the political spectrum, but their own constituents who maybe like that's where the pressure needs to come with. And then it gets to the question, how do we influence those people who are the constituents to also be engaged in the process as well? I don't know if you
for sure. And like one of the things my wife always points out is how much the issues we discuss that are really divisive issues are centered around things that happen in town ward, right? So you have these issues that are primarily focused in the downtown, and you have a whole slew of people making casting their vote on these issues that don't like necessarily engage fully downtown or don't represent the people of downtown, right? So you have people in the burbs that have more of a proportional representation of these decisions that affect people downtown, right? You know what I mean?
For sure. And it's not like that is really ever switched in a major way. It's not like, oh, we're focused on North End stuff almost exclusively for like several weeks. It is downtown obviously is where everything kind of happens. So
yeah, and the thing people have been I don't want to be so negative because there's been some fun stuff with the other counselors, and they are good people, and it shouldn't be like an absolute that we all have to agree all the time. Like it's healthy, I think, for us to disagree. And I think that some good, healthy, respectful conversations have happened between us. And I have to kind of remember to take my own advice, which is that I need to try to understand where people are coming from and listen and respect the viewpoints of people who feel differently than me. I think we've seen how that looks when people are just like butting heads. So I really tried to, I take one step forward, two steps back, but I really tried to connect with the people that I work alongside, like Keith took me out for lunch last week, and we have some core things that we feel differently about, but he's been a really friendly guy to me and a nice guy and given me a lot of good political advice from his experience. And we've kind of vibed off each other in these meetings, and that's been a good experience. Chad's handing me a note. What's your note, Chad? Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Chad's just talking about the need of council to represent the people and care about one another. It's one city, he's saying, no matter if you have a house or a tent, we all matter in the same way. That's his note. And like, that's what I was saying at this Fleming thing today, was that we need to take care of each other. And we can't just be like this bureaucracy that takes care of the business class, like by the business class for the business class, and that is the mindset. Like, hey, we're here for the taxpayer, right? And there's some truth to that, right? There's some truth to that, which Jeff Leal always says he's trying to get more of an industrial tax base for us. And like by doing that, it will help be able to throw more resources at the issues that we have. So I don't want to be just like bullheaded about that. Like, I don't know, Danny, help me out. Danny, I gotta
Yeah.
say, I gotta interject, man. The way that you broke down the beer and weed thing was so cool. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing too. And yeah, like I agree with Jeff Leal as well. Like we need to attract business to the city. It's gonna be better for the city. Ideally not a nuclear pellets factory, but something maybe more cohesive with what Electric City Peterborough is. And yeah, and I was super happy to like break down that story because I think it's one of those things, and maybe just tying it into back to like decorum is that it's great that you and Keith Riel get along, and I'm sure on an interpersonal level I would get along with just about anyone, right? But we're also, when we're attacking these things, we tend to be attacking the systems that create these results, right? And it's not personal, and it's frustrating maybe that only a small proportion of people get to represent the city at large, and as you say, it's disproportionate as well. But what I loved about the beer and weed story, which if you don't know, Alex, during one of the coldest days of the year,
Okay? Sorry.
went over to one of the encampments in town, was at Wolf Street, and you were asking people to donate things like beer and cannabis, both of which, if people don't know, are legal.
Totally legal
So
substances.
I think that revealed like a lot of the stigma, and as you I'm sure know, that was something that also like was people were talking about it all over the country, right? It became a story that was greater than Peterborough, and
Yeah.
and something newsworthy worth talking about. It was epic, as somebody in chat is saying, and sometimes that's what we need,
Yeah,
is
but I
something
mean,
that will captivates imaginations a bit.
but that very way in which that was handled is like represents so much of how this council run has been. It's like doing things that I feel are just so natural have been
Yeah.
almost like gaslit. I hate to use that word, but it's almost like I've been gaslit to believe that the things I do are wrong. I'm not breaking a municipal bylaw. I'm not camping, right? Councilors have a code of conduct where they can't go against the decision of council, and we have a parks and facilities bylaw, right? But I'm not camping, so I'm not breaking that bylaw. What I was doing was I was at home in the privilege of my warm house, and it was going to be minus 40. And I thought about the people I had personal relationships to in the encampment, and I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be living outside through that when I can't even spend 5 minutes in my car. Chad's buzzing right now. But, so I went down and I said, guys, what do you need? And they gave me a list, and I used my influence and reach as an artist and as an artist, and I put that list on to the community, and the community responded. I won't get into how they responded, but
Yeah, I think it should be said too. Like, you didn't exclusively call. Like,
Chad said, I bet the crime report for that day was down.
True.
Because the mindset is not,
Yeah.
I'm not enabling people to get messed up, right? It's like how do we calm the anxiety and stress and trauma of being homeless when it's minus 40, and how do we create a pathway to get people to accept help when they may need to get out of a tent for that night, right? And I have been someone who has had a dependency on substances, and I know what that is like, and I know what that is like to experience outside. And man, to be withdrawing outside, Chad, talk to me. Come here. You were there for that,
I know,
right?
it's hard.
What did you say about that? What did you say about that night at the shelter? You said that night? What was that night? No fights, no nothing, no
fights,
police calls.
No police, no fire departments were down there,
Yeah,
but any other, maybe people are withdrawing or missing their appointments and that.
come closer.
What do you see down there?
Yeah.
Fires, fights, and all that.
Yeah.
So what you did a helping hand to people in the community that you represent.
Yeah.
That actually helped calm people down.
Yeah.
And made them realize there's someone there to help.
Yeah. And we
Even if they got a beer or a joint,
Mhm.
that calmed them down for 5 minutes, made them think of reality again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how is it different than me like buying you a beer, Danny, in your house?
We're buying a
You-
city councilor a Red Bull.
Or like how people
Yeah.
to a bar and buy each other drinks. Like it's no different, in my opinion.
No,
I
no,
know.
it's no
And
different.
I mean that's why it was such a stark contrast as to like how we treat each other, and then suddenly somebody showed humanity publicly to their friends, to their community, and people were absolutely losing their minds. So it was just such a obvious, revealing way to show that people are really stigmatized against this issue.
Yeah.
Most people from the police station asked what the crime report was that day, or the fire department.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a takedown.
Chad said it was the calmest night down there for them.
Yeah.
And,
Oh,
like
I
I'm
imagine.
I'm in recovery, right? Like I'm as sober, I'm straight up and down like 6 o'clock. Like I don't do nothing. And I believe that that's what works for me in my life. And like, I've had like lost so many people to addiction, and I have friends in recovery that I've almost lost who I've seen like have a huge change by being abstinent. And it's not like I'm just some shoot from the hip. It's not like I'm just trying to give people like it's not like I'm trying to just enable people's misery. But it's just the way that I understand harm reduction is that for me in my life, it was really difficult to make that jump from like where I was at my bottom to where I am today. And it was like there was a pathway out of that, right? And the approach that always worked for me was like the empathetic approach. Like, man, if someone asked me when I was broke and shot out and going through withdrawal, if like there's anything I needed, and if you needed a tall can or something like that, would have changed my whole day.
Does.
Would have changed my whole day, right?
Yeah.
What you
Yeah.
work for makes that.
Yeah.
That's what you did. That helped people
Yeah.
so good. No matter if they got a beer or a joint, whatever. That
Yeah.
made them sit down and relax.
Yeah.
They didn't go out panhandling, bothering people on the streets.
Yeah.
They didn't go rob a store.
Yeah.
They didn't start fights or a fire.
Chad was saying how some of his friends that day when it was like -40 without the proper gear, sleeping outside to be cold to begin with, to have that beer to calm their nerves.
Yeah.
That day, like they would have had to go out and panhandle or to collect cans somewhere. And the way that the community responded saved people from having to do that on that really cold day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think so much of this is tied to the stigma of not only addiction, but like it's connection to crime and stuff like that, right? Which is, as I think Chad is very rightfully pointing out, crime was probably down that day. I anticipate that the tone of the shelter it was also, as he's saying, completely
And
different
again,
as a result of that.
all the complaints about Wolf Street, right? People
Yeah.
are complaining. Like, I don't want to diminish the very real harms that people that live in that neighborhood are experiencing. I don't want to diminish that.
Mhm.
But by meeting people's needs in a situation like what's happening at Wolf Street, you relieve the neighborhood of some of those harms, right? Like, of course, people, as an example, of course, people are gonna find a place to go to the bathroom when they don't have that.
Yeah.
So how do you
Yeah.
feel how do you feel that closing up bathrooms for people and not giving like people a place to use the bathroom, this thing that we all take for granted, right? How do you think, like,
Go down on the jobs down there.
yeah, a couple of porta potties, it seems like such a basic thing, right?
Neighborhood for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
just like these systems we have in place are just so drastically under-resourced, and by getting rid of them, it's just like it's going to create such a bigger problem than we have, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking as someone who, like you, straight up and down, don't drink, don't do drugs anymore. It took me a long time, and I was thankful for the supports that I had, getting to the point where I was ready to stop that, right? To stop that way of living. It's unrealistic to think that sobriety is the main and only answer to the issues that are affecting people and are affecting people in our community, right? Like, there's no way. And one beer, one joint, that's harm reduction. And that's what I wrote an article about this, right? Again, and Danny did the breakdown and everything like that. But until it's not the only way. Expecting someone who is living on the streets to suddenly go through withdrawals or anything like that without shelter is, you know, it's inhumane, and it gets back to this whole idea of just dehumanizing, you know, and
Very
it's
Chad,
it's
very much so. And
yeah,
like
it's
I'm
it's awful.
like, and again, it was a journey. Like I was on methadone and like all these ways that led me to where I'm at, right? It didn't just happen like that. And, you know, I said in that council meeting about that issue, like when people were saying, no, we don't need this. We don't need a winter drop. We need a more rehab. It's like frozen people, dead people, frozen people don't go to rehab. They don't make it.
Exactly.
Right.
I've written to Dave Smith saying that exact same thing, and he didn't respond to me for some reason. I don't know.
Well, you know,
Very hard to recover.
Dave Smith said something cool. When I heard him talk, he was saying how one of the questions he got was like, people always bring up Portugal or whatever, right? And he's like, why can't we someone asked him, why can't we legislate people into treatment? Like, we just need to get more people in treatment. Like, why can't we just like force people into it? And like, without getting into the argument that like forced treatment doesn't work.
Yeah.
He very aptly said like that it doesn't exist. Right. So like my friend who would show up to the hospital, you know, who we're talking about, like literally dead. He would show up to PRHC dead from a fentanyl overdose. They would revive him from the fentanyl overdose, being homeless in the back of the ambulance. He'd get into Emerge, they check him out, and he would literally be back on the street in like 15 minutes from that death, right? And so the counselors that are the person that's removed from that is like, why can't you force that guy into treatment? And we can't, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. There's no immediate support when incidences like that are happening, and it's happening like every day, right? Every day, you know?
Yeah. We are quite over time. I would love to keep talking. But I also maybe want to just end on a question that somebody said in chat, and it was, how can we support you? And how can we support also like the community at large that you're championing?
Oh my gosh.
My answer to that would be everybody get on the same page.
Yeah.
And help one another out. One city.
Chad saying that everyone needs to get on the same page and help each other out, which is the exact same thing I said at Fleming. We need to take care of each other. But Chad, hold up. I think that as a counselor who feels like this imposter syndrome, who feels like on the minority in terms of my views, I think that to feel a continuation of the support that I felt from Town Ward during the election, to feel that at council would be really great. I think that, you know, we deal with a lot of issues that are happening very quickly. You can all kind of navigate to what those reports we're discussing are through the peterborough.ca website. But I think that the more people can just take the time to like watch the council meetings, stay connected to the issues. And when there's an issue that's important, like we have a naloxone policy that's being up for debate for the final time this Monday. And I think that if you feel that it's important for city staff who are on the front lines of the overdose crisis to be able to carry and administer naloxone, then we as council need to hear that. Instead of it just being mine and Joy's voices, I need to feel validated by that, because I know I am, right? So that was maybe a long answer, Danny, but you know, before I was on council, I had this like Apple Note of like all of council and the mayor, their email, so I could just cut and paste it to whatever email. And I think that those copy and paste emails kind of just get like forgotten. I think the real impactful ones are just short and sweet and personal. And so that does make a difference.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
And having me here, thank you so much. I hope we get to do this again. Chad, do you want to come?
For sure.
Come here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you so much, Chad. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
And we'll definitely do our best to do it again and keep it going.
Yeah, amazing.
Absolutely.
All right.
See you later.
Take care.